Hello and welcome back. Going to continue here in part 2 of the mod conversion of the potato washer from 17 to 19. As I mentioned in part 1, this is my conversion or converted version from 15 to 17. Yours may differ slightly in the layout and how the particle systems have all been joined together and whatever else. So again, just bear that in mind. So we're going to continue on here. Still got some parts here which are not showing up. Again, like I did in part 1, if I click on the main unit here, you can see all these parts kind of have an outline here, and that's again because they're using shaders that are not compatible with 19, so we need to continue on through and work through those and update them accordingly. So we've done fair few in part 1. We're going to just work with the others and see where we end up here. Now, working with shaders is sometimes a little bit time consuming because you need to go into game, test it out, and if that shader doesn't do what you want it to do, you need to come back in and change it and maybe play around with the attributes. Some of them you can see work in the Giants editor, like the mesh rotate shader. It does clearly show it rotating, and we've looked at that in part 1 of this series. But other shaders, they will only start to do what they're meant to do once you get it into game. They won't actually show you what's going on in the editor because it requires the actual game engine to be running for it to all do its thing. So what I'm actually going to do here is for the belts, there is a shader that kind of is similar as far as I know to the scroll UV shader from 17. So if we actually go to replace or add new shader, I'm going to go to my game installation folder here. And if I go into data shaders, there's one down the bottom here which is called iv'e scroll shader, and this one over here is scroll UV shader. So they could be very similar in the way that they work. I can't say for sure on that without actually going into the shader itself and looking at all the different attributes and how they're set up. So you might have to have a bit of a play around here, because there's also another one which works very similar again, which is the vehicle shader for 19. So if I actually go into the game installation folder directly, we go into data and then shaders, and I go down to the vehicle shader, and we open this in Notepad++, you can see that there are several different things in here to do with mesh scrolling, UV rotate, and various other different things. So you can see that this one is a UV scroll shader, and we have that in the actual vehicle shader. UV scroll is right here. So there may be some points where one or two shaders will do the same thing. Now you can only apply one shader at a time, but multiple shaders might give you the same outcome, or work for you, and give you what you actually want. So what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to actually apply the scroll UV shader, or whatever it was called, wherever it is, this one here, the UV scroll shader. I'm going to apply that one, and then we'll test this out and just see how that works. If it doesn't work the way I want it to work, then I might need to change that and then use the vehicle shader instead. But that's the one I'm actually going to work with for now. So we'll go through all of these, and you can see that this one here is automatically updated because it uses the same system as this one. It could be bound by the actual material ID or something like that, whereas this one does not. So you can still see it's still using the old scroll UV shader. So again, I'm going to update this one. So we'll go down to here, UV scroll shader. And if we go to this one is also updated. Again, that could be because they're showing the same material ID. So you can see there are some differences here. This one is quite like a yellowy kind of color with some black indents in it, whatever else, whereas this one is completely black. That might be because it's of its location. Sometimes when you're working with different areas of a mod, some parts are heavily shaded, or because of the shadows and things like that. This one here is open to the light, so it gets a lot more light on it, whereas this one is down within all of these parts here, so it's not getting quite so much light. So if I go Control L and add a light in, it gives it a bit more light in here, but this one has not really changed that much. So again, that could be a difference in textures as well, because this one here kind of matches in with this one up here. So that's probably what I would say they were meant to look like. So if I actually go to, let's see, top belt, and I have a look at the texture, you can see this one does actually have the yellow with black kind of indents in it. Whereas if I go to this one here, whichever that one is, this one here, and we look at the texture, that one still is sharing the same texture, but it's probably using it. The UV is mapped to a different part of this texture. It's probably mapped to just this part here and not including these parts here. So they are using the same shaders, same materials or same textures, but just the way the UV map has been laid across it is slightly different in certain areas to give you different effects over the whole mod. But as far as that goes, the shader we're going to go with for now is the UV scroll shader, and that has now brought in the parts. They are now visible, so that's a good sign at least. But we'll just need to work with that in game and see if that is actually going to do what we want to do, because at the moment, as you can see, they are static, they're not moving, so not really going to do much. The UV offset UV, I don't think this makes any difference in the Giants editor, so you can set those parameters and values to whatever you want, and it's not, doesn't seem to make any difference within the actual editor itself. So what I'm going to do is leave those on 0 for now, and then we'll have a look at that in game and just see what those values need to be set to later on if they need to be changed. But again, like I say, as far as that goes, they are now showing up. And just to show you, if for example I was to use the vehicle shader instead, so if I go into this one here and we've got the UV scroll shader, if I now replace that with the vehicle shader, so we'll go vehicle shader, the color of it changes slightly as well because we've now got the dirt effect on it. So again, you could change this one down to 0, so it takes away the wear, because this is going to be a rubber style kind of belt, I guess, so it wouldn't have metallic wear on it, so you'd want that to be on 0. And then this one here I would perhaps maybe set to, I don't know, 0.5, 0.6, I don't know, 0.7 maybe, something like that, just to give it a little bit of a dirt effect on it or something like that. Let's try 0.9, that's way too much. 0.8, 0.75. I think I will go with 0.7 there. So there are going to be some, depending on what shader you opt for, there may be some different parameters that you'll need to change to make things work the way you want them to work or where you want them to look and all the rest of it. But again, you can see that that is not moving. Irregardless to what I have the settings in here, it's still not moving. If I go into here, we do have some different parts here, so I could go to UV scroll, which will now give me some different attributes again. So we have our UV offset or offset UV. This is exactly the same as what we had for our other one, because all of these belts, or nearly all of these belts, use the same setup. They're going to match. So this one and this one are now using the vehicle shader, whereas this one is using the UV scroll. That one's using the vehicle shader. This one is using the UV scroll shader, but you can see we have the offset UV in there, and we also have the offset UV in this one. So they're more than likely set up very similar in the way they work as far as the UV scroll mechanism works. It's just with the vehicle shader, you can work with the dirt and, you know, change some parameters there, whereas with the scroll shader, the UV scroll shader, you can't. You don't have that those attributes to work with. So again, depending on what you want to actually get out of it in this instance, you might, if you've got like this one here, a clean belt, it's going to maybe look a bit too clean. You might want to add some dirt effects to it. Then the vehicle shader might be a better option if that works, which we'll need to test later on, because I can work with these different things here and add dirt to it, which will be based on the gloss map here. And then you know, that will potentially give me more visuals than just a clean rotating belt or whatever. So, you know, you have to kind of work with the shaders, pick one that's going to do the job, but also pick one that's going to give you enough attributes and enough parameters to change to get the visual outlook that you want as well. So what I might actually do is leave one of them or a couple of them using the vehicle shader and then a couple of them using the UV scroll shader, and we'll just see what we end up with in that sense at the end of it all. So that's fine, we can leave that as it is for now. So we've got some more decals down here to work with. I don't think these ones have any kind of shaders applied because they are just kind of like oil stain shaders, so they're just a specific texture like that, an alpha channel texture to give you some sort of effect to it. There are some differences between the way things work in 17 to 19 when it comes to decals. Some of them will require alpha blending and some of them will not. So if I actually take the alpha blending off, you can see that that's now practically disappeared because this one actually needs the alpha blending, but some of them do not. And you might have to, again, have a bit of a play around and untick some boxes or tick some boxes to get the desired effect. And then we have this one over here as well. Again, that one is more than likely going to need it. I don't know, it just depends. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. It's a bit hit and miss sometimes. So that kind of looks a bit there, whereas with the alpha blending it gives it a bit more, as it states, a bit more blending between the two different channels, the alpha channel as well as the main channel there. So you know, again, it's sometimes when you're doing conversions and stuff like that, you have to kind of change a lot of parameters and a lot of attributes to get the desired effect that you want out of it. So for the most part, I think we've got everything working as we need to do. I'm actually going to delete the light so I don't forget. I know it's going to make it a little bit darker, but I'm bound to forget it otherwise. So let's have a look what we've got through here then. So we've got our bevel collision, that's fine. We've got another collision. Don't know what that one is. Oh, that's this one here, is it? Okay, that's fine. Again, that's not using a shader or anything. It's just a set texture, so that's fine. We don't need to worry about that. The grid, again, I have no idea what that one is. That is something. Oh, okay, that's that part there, is it? That's something to do with this piece in here. That's fine though. Again, that's not using a shader or anything. This one here is though. So what is that? That's in the same place again. So I don't know what that is. That is using this vehicle shader. So yeah, I don't know. That's again some kind of grate or something. I don't know what that is. Some really weird textures on there. Very difficult to see. What I might do is just pull that out a minute just so I can actually look at it and see what it is. I don't know. Just some kind of backing plate of some kind so you can't see inside the unit. That's okay. Again, like I said before in part 1, I don't like using the support shaders, and this is a support shader, so for these I would probably update this to the later vehicle shader. So we'll go vehicle shader, and then it would entirely depend on what preference you wanted out of this. I wouldn't particularly want it to have the wear again, so I would probably put that to 0, and then this one here maybe I don't know, 0.8, yeah, something like that maybe, or 0.7, yeah, something like that. So it's got a bit of dirt on it or whatever else, but as far as that goes, it's not, you know, you can't really see it that much, so it might not necessarily be that important, but I would potentially prefer to use the fully fledged compatible version of the shader, you know, for 19, not some support shader where possible. But again, as far as the wear goes, you could possibly play around with this a little bit and just see what you can get out of it. But sometimes these, again, like I said before, they're either on or off. There's no kind of in between. So for me, I would just set that to 0 and then have it like that. In this case, like I say, it's not very visible, so it's probably not going to matter that much anyway. Tip decal. Again, that's not using a shader, so nor is that one, or that one, so that's fine. And then this one, I think, is the base plate for this entire mod, so we don't need to worry about that either. And then we have some other parts here which are to do with the mod, the main unit. Again, this is using the support shader, so I would want to probably update that again. So all of these types of things, as you go through them, when you update them to the latest shaders, now potentially if you wanted to, you could use the support shader for testing purposes, and then once you know everything is working, you could come back in and update these later. But I prefer to do all of this up front, and then get all of this side of things done, and then I don't need to worry about it later on. I can just start to rearrange stuff to work with whatever I need to get it set up for whatever script I'm going to work with. So again, like I say, this one here, I'm going to change this to the vehicle shader, the FS19 vehicle shader, and we can then reduce the wear and take the dirt down to 0.5. Again, this might be 0.7 maybe. Let's have a look what we've got here. So yeah, that's probably not too bad. That actually looks okay. That's fine, we'll go with that. So because that probably shared the same with this one, did it? No, it did not. Okay, so we need to do that one as well, wherever that is. Don't know where that is, but let's just have a look and make sure it is actually set to visible. Yes. So let's just pull that out, see what that is. Okay. No idea. But no, that seems to be buried inside the unit. Perhaps it's visible from in here. No, not really. Well, kind of, maybe. I guess it is a little bit very difficult to get into that position. But yeah, it is in there somewhere. So again, for this, I probably would change that shader again. So we'll just change that one. So we'll go vehicle shader for 19, and again, turn off the wear and set this to maybe 0.5 or something like that. Again, for stuff that's not easily visible, not going to really worry about it too much. So that's that one, and then we have this one here. That's not using a shader, nor is that. That one is, but that is using the 19 vehicle shader, so that's fine. So that's automatically already been done for us. Same with, no, not that one. That one is still using the older version, so we need to change this as well. So let's do that one. So we'll go add or replace shader, and we'll go vehicle shader, and you can see it's again added all the wear and the dirt. So I'll go 0.7 maybe, or 0.65. Again, this is all things that you can mess about with and get the visual outcome that you're looking for. That might be a little bit too much, maybe, I don't know. So we'll go 0.4, 0.5, 0.45. There we go, something like that. I think that probably is okay. So we'll do that one. Let's do that, and then if we go into all of this stuff, so when you're doing anything like this, it is, or it can be, time consuming because you need to go through every single one of these. So this is using the updated version, so that's fine. So all of those are fine, and we've got this one here, that's fine, and then this one, it's okay. That's not using a shader. So again, that's using the support shader, so I don't particularly want to use that, so I'm going to update that one as well. So add or replace shader, and we'll go down to vehicle shader, And again, we need to adapt all of this, so we'll do like so, and then 0.7 maybe, 0.6, something like that. Yeah, that doesn't look too bad. That looks okay. We'll go with that. Something like that. And then you just need to kind of work through all of this stuff. So if we go into all of these, that's fine. That's fine. iv'e scroll shader. Okay, so right. Okay. Yeah, don't know about that. We might have to play around with that one as well later on. See what we've got. That's using the iv'e scroll shader. Yeah, okay. Well, we'll work with that and see what that looks like, because I don't think that's going to come out right, but we'll see how that works. So we'll make that invisible again. There we go. Let's have a look. So if we continue on through, that's also using a support shader, add or replace shaders, and we want vehicle shader. So if we go to here, again, it's going to add in all of the wear and everything else, which is going to look nasty. So we'll get rid of that. So we'll come down here, put that to 0, and then put that to maybe 0.7, something like that. There we go, that looks a bit better, doesn't it? Yeah, that's better. Something like that. Probably will do. Let's put the light back in again so we can see. Oh yeah, that looks nice, that's alright, that'll do. A little bit of dirt here and there, but you know, we don't want a dirt, you know, the engine I wouldn't necessarily say is going to be completely caked in dirt, so a little bit here and there is okay, but as far as the rest of it goes, I would expect it to be fairly clean. So that's fine. So that's that one. We've got the motor, then this one is support shader again, so go add or replace shader, vehicle shader. And then we need to just again it's all kind of very repetitive, but it is what it is, and you've got to have to work through it. Also, we'll get rid of the wear and we'll change this to 0.7, something like that. Once you kind of get an understanding of each part, it will probably come together, and the values that you enter will be very similar across each part that you actually change. So that one's okay. Let me just actually go into here and see what these parts are. So we've got that's fine. That's fine. So those ones are going to be okay. That's fine. So let's go to the next one. And main body. Yep, that's fine. Okay, they should be okay. So we'll continue on then. So that should be pretty much what we've got set up for those. Shouldn't be anything else there that we need to change as far as that goes. And you can see we have everything moving as it's meant to be. Again, these parts here will need to be changed potentially. I don't know. We'll have to see how that works out when we get it into game. But that's a long way off just yet. We've got a fair bit to continue on with at the moment. So we'll go ahead and save, and then I'm going to close this down. And then if I go back into here, so if I open up potato washer, so we should now have all of the parts where they're meant to be, moving, doing their thing. So that should be okay. So what have we got then? We've got something here is still using the out of date scroll UV shader. So we need to figure out what that is. Sounds I'm not worried about for the time being. We can convert those later. So we need to figure out what is using the scroll UV shader. So there's something in here that's still using the scroll UV shader. That's really difficult to say. So let's have a look what we've got then. So don't think these would be using any kind of what's that one? That's the emissive light shader. That's fine. We don't need that. Particle systems are not set up in that fashion. So that's vehicle shader, vehicle shader, UV scroll shader, scroll shader. Okay, so this one here then is mesh rotate shader, which is my updated version. This one here is mesh rotate shader, mesh rotate shader, and that one is that one is the same. I'm not quite sure what is using the scroll UV shader. Or UV scroll shader, or whatever it's called. So let's have a look. Yeah. Well, something's clearly using it. UV shader. So I go into here, Control F, shader. Spell it right, that would help. There we go. Texture and scroll UV shader. File ID is 7. So texture R5. Potatoes 2 diffuse. So something to do with, I don't think that it would be those. There we go, that's what it was. Potato plane. Scroll UV shader. So what is that? Oh, it's this one. Interesting. Don't know why that would have that particular shader on it, but that's fine. So what we'll do then is that is the scroll UV shader. So we'll update this one to the UV scroll shader. So it will look like that. And we'll see how that turns out. I don't know why it would need that, but that's okay. We'll see. Perhaps that does something, it moves or something. I haven't used this particular mod in some time, so there may be a reason why that is required to have that particular setup. So if we go ahead and save that, close it down. Yes, and let's close that, and then we'll open this up again. And we'll see what errors we get this time. Okay, so that error has now gone away, so that's nice. So we've then got, again, the sounds I'm not going to worry about, error backlights. corona main, beacon light, etc, etc. Doesn't have all required vertex attributes for material beacon lights. So if we go back into here, then work animations, animation. So this one is using emissive light shader, static light. So let's see. I put that to none. Paraslax does not provide the fine vertex attributes required by the current material color. So if I leave that on emissive light shader, let's okay, so it is accepted without a variation. So let's just see if that actually works. Might do it, might not, just depends. We'll try it, we'll see if that works, but at least we won't have the error. If we go ahead and save again and open it up. Okay, that error has now gone away, so that's good. We'll have to see if that actually works or not. Okay, so that's it for part 2 then, and we'll continue in part 3 where we'll have a bit more of a look at particle systems and converting them over and whatever else. I'm Shell Wizard, thanks very much for watching, I'll catch you in the next one.